Hi there. So we're going to do a little something that is probably just, it's going to be really casual. I am going to work on building um, the next version of Digital Church of our platform. If you go to digitalchurch.com, you'll see our platform there. We offer it's a website platform essentially for churches to build websites on, with sermon publishing, events, connect cards, small groups, things like that. But we built our first version on WordPress Multisite. And actually we've built a few versions now on WordPress Multisite. And Multisite is great for when you're small. We've got about 100 websites right now on our platform. But what I would like to do is start building using a new method called WordPress Multitenancy. And essentially it's similar to Multisite. With Multisite, you can run multiple websites off of one WordPress installation, and as a result, you just have to update that one WordPress installation for software, and you can test kind of in one sub-site of that site and be pretty confident that all of your updates are in good shape and your tests can go through well. So the difference though is WordPress Multisite uses one database, and every site has their own kind of database tables, but they are essentially one database, one installation. Multitenancy uses one WordPress installation but sets up multiple databases and PHP workers and some other things for each individual site. So it's sort of a hybrid between multi-site and individual sites. And so we're just starting to set this up. It's probably going to take several months for us to get this ready to actually roll users into it. But it's a tricky setup. It's not really straightforward. It's not very simple. It relies on using GitHub to actually push all updates via Git. It's something that I know a little bit about, but not a ton, and so we're gonna try this out. So, all right, let me share my screen. And we're going to go to GridPane's knowledge base. And here's using GridPane multi-tenancy, and they explain a little bit about this. You can read through this on your own if you want. Essentially, you have to set up a Git repository. And so they have a sample Git repository here that includes the plugins that they need for sites to have on GridPane. There's also sort of a basic repository as well that doesn't actually have the extra plugins in it, but this one does, so we're going to use that. And you can see here, one thing to take note of is that it's at WordPress 6.0. Let's see, tags, that will probably say 6.0. I did this earlier today, and there was an issue where GitHub actually automatically updated my repo to the newest version of WordPress, but then it deleted all of my plugins that I was working on getting in there. So we're going to start fresh, and now that I've kind of done a once through, I think that'll be okay to kind of do this again now. Okay, so I'm going to download this, and then I'm going to put this, I have a folder that I keep it in Dropbox, which might not be the best thing, but here's the last installation I tried, Digital Church WordPress. I'm going to just kind of get rid of that for now. And actually I won't need a folder because this is downloading in a directory. So we'll get rid of that. Everything's running a little slow right now. Just trashing an empty folder. It's fine, we'll leave it. Okay, well, sometimes our computer doesn't go as fast as we'd like, huh? Need to upgrade to a Apple Silicon. Okay, so next we have, here we go, still decompressing that zip file. Once that's done, I'm going to move it where I want it, and then I'm going to initialize a new repo. While that gets ready, let's go into my digital church account in GitHub, and we'll set up the new repo. Okay, so here's our old one that kind of got messed up. You can see here where it says WordPress tag, and if I look at activity, you can see that I was putting some stuff in it, and then GitHub Actions bot pushed a commit. Did it twice actually, and essentially what it did was it was updating my WordPress installation automatically to 6.4.2. And while I do want it updated, I don't want this to go in there and start messing around with what I'm working on. So we're going to disable that in the new repo that we do. Okay, let's do digital church. Let's go ahead and create a repo. And this one we'll call digital church-wp. Multi-tenancy. That's enough for now. This is going to be a private repo because I'm going to add premium plugins and stuff to it, and I don't want to just put those out there for anybody to be able to download. And at times I end up with some stuff in my plugin that I don't want to get out there either. So we will keep that private. Okay. Now here's the important thing. You see here there's an Actions tab. And the Actions tab is where in the future it would show up and say, you know, here are some actions that have happened automatically on GitHub. So to fix the issue that we had last time, I found out that you need to go into Settings, Actions, General, and we are actually going to just get rid of the ability to do actions right now at all. Just to keep it simple, and hopefully that's the last time we have to worry about an issue with that. Okay. Now the next thing I'm going to need is I'm going to need to copy this URL to my clipboard because I manage a lot of my code updates and stuff in VS Code, and in VS Code, if I go to set up a repo, it will try to set up my repo for my Mark Tenney account, like my personal account. Digital Church is an organization, and it doesn't give you an option to create a new repo or to create a new remote even without pasting in the remote URL. I'll show you that in a minute. Okay, not sure why our zip file is taking so long to open up, but that's okay. All right, so next, actually the next thing really is going to be moving the downloaded code into the correct folder and then opening it. Here we go, it's ready now. Opening it in VS Code. So here's the GridPane WordPress templates, all plugins. And you can see WP content plugins. There are just a handful of plugins in the plugins directory, and then there's also must-use plugins as well. And these are what I lost earlier today when the GitHub bot went through and updated my WordPress. So I'm sure there's a way to allow that to happen, but tell it to not touch the uploads folder, and maybe I'll figure that out in the future, but for now I just don't want to be messing anything up. So I'm going to rename this. We'll rename this Digital Church-WP, and I'm going to just drag this into VS Code, and that's going to open the folder up in VS Code where I can actually initialize the repository. Probably should have opened VS Code a little earlier just to have it open so that we didn't have to wait for this, but this is the beauty of live streaming, I guess. Here we go. Okay, so here is our new folder. Again, WP content plugins. We've got some of our GridPane plugins and whatnot there. Matches up what we see in here. So then what we need to do is we need to initialize the repository on the local machine. So that's that simple. Initial commit to local. And that's going to commit all of those files into this local repository. Okay. Now what we need to do is, remember we copied this. So now that we have that URL, we can go in here. Let's see. This is the GitHub. You can see no remotes are configured. Well, let's see. Actually, under the source control, I'm going to add a remote. I'm going to paste in the link to that remote that I just set up. I'm going to name it GitHub because that's where it lives. Okay, and now let's just do initial commit to GitHub and publish it. And this should be syncing all those files up to the GitHub repository to make sure that what's on my local machine is actually also on GitHub. We'll give it a minute because it's a lot to push up there right now. Did it go? I think it did. We'll kind of refresh our main code page, and there it is. So there's that. And we already turned off our automatic updates, so that should be good. So I did have some themes that I had put in this old one, but then they got overwritten, so they're gone. I had some plugins, so let me put these plugins in there. And so here's what will happen in GitHub. I'm going to move these plugins into my new installation. Okay, so now there's all these plugin folders. They have a bunch of new files, and essentially VS Code's going to see those changes. And now I need to, these are all plugins that start with A in my list. So add plugins A. I hear my kids in the background. They just got home from school. So once this is done, what we should see is in GitHub, WP content, plugins. And right now it's not showing anything else, but it will. Oh, here we go. So one set of changes that we're going to sync. So actually the first thing that I was doing was actually just committing those changes to the local repository. And now it's actually syncing them up to the remote, which is on GitHub. And that's probably going to take some time. So let's go back to our GridPane multi-tenancy article here. Just take a look at things. So essentially what we have to do is we download the repository, we create a repo on GitHub. Then I'm going to have to add that repo to my GridPane account. And then once I do that, I'm going to need to set up a new server, convert it to a multi-tenant server, because the multi-tenant servers are kind of set apart from the regular site servers or multi-site servers even, as they're kind of reserved just for multi-tenant setups. And then I add that Git repo that is already in my GridPane account to that server and say, all right, this is how we're going to manage the files on the server. And there's also a webhook that I can set up so that I can do push to deploy. So basically, whenever the GitHub repo gets updated, it will kind of send a call out to the server and say, hey, the code base just got updated. It will update the server with the GitHub repo. And then that's how we'll run all of our updates. The great thing about that is it's what's called an immutable code base, which from what I understand means essentially even if the sites got hacked, for instance, and something injected some new files into WordPress, GitHub's copy wouldn't have those files because it only gets the files that I send it from my local computer. And then those local files would basically overwrite any changes. It would also show up when I did a GitHub pull or whatever, so that I would see what was happening. And it kind of helps us to make sure that, makes it rock solid as far as changes to the code base. Okay, let's check back on this. Okay, that looks like that's done. So now we should see another set. Great. So there's all my A plugins. So I'm going to be, it's going to take me some time. I'm going to be working through a long list of plugins. because these are just this set of plugins, and then I've got all of these left. So I will be going through all these and downloading them to my local machine and then pushing them up to GitHub. But so here's kind of the first step on the journey to multi-tenancy. I think the setup's going to be a little intense but straightforward, and then I'm sure that there are going to be some things, some problems that I'm going to have to solve, and I'm probably going to need to ask people for help with that. So anyhow, that's it for today. Thanks, guys.